Power. I'm not talking about the kind of power that can blow up an entire city, or the one that lights up a metropolis with its dazzling electricity. I speak of the invisible filaments woven into our bones, the kind that binds hierarchies, twists weaknesses into chains, and leaves you gasping under debts you never signed. It's the force that pins you to the earth without a touch. It lives in the politician's smirk, the boss's silence, the friend who accidentally forgets your name. It's the debt with no ledger, the one that makes you whisper, "I owe you," even when you don't. Yes, that power. Oh, my child, this time I want to talk to you about this kind of power. The dimension of power that can control, manipulate you, put you into a hierarchy and influencing you. These are the fundamental currencies of human interaction. My child, how are you? I hope you are always blessed with health and serenity as you navigate through life. In my previous voice notes, I shared with you reflections on the philosophy of gratitude, empathy, will to power, and the philosophy of resilience as explored by Camus and Viktor Frankl. If you feel you haven't fully grasped what I meant, please feel free to revisit them. My intention in sending those voice notes was to help you understand the path of life, to become a wise individual who views life's hardships as an integral part of the search for meaning, a groundwork for a more comprehensive understanding of human dynamics. Now, I want to talk about power. If you have a competitive spirit, you might find the advice I'm about to share with you useful. If you hunger to win, play. But know the board is rigged. And even if you're not someone who enjoys competition, you can still observe it from the outside, watching how power operates around you. Study the players, the gambits, the lies swallowed as truth. Sometimes, the greatest power is knowing the game exists, my child. We're going to explore power in its raw, unfiltered complexity. Not as an abstract concept, but as a living, breathing mechanism that shapes individual and collective human experiences. Before the forest, there were trees. Before the trees, grass grew first. And before the grass, there was only empty land. But this land was not truly empty. Within it lay seeds, waiting for their time to rise. And when a seed finds a crack, it grows fiercely. My child, the grass appears first. It is small, flexible, and quickly covers the land. But grass cannot stand alone, it bends weak under the wind. Then small trees emerge, climbing upward, stealing more sunlight, and turning into towering trees that dominate the land. Together, they become a forest. What happens to the grass? It remains, but it is no longer the ruler. Perhaps this is how power works, my child. It grows like an ecosystem, following, repeating its patterns. I call this the fractal theory of power. Fractal is a term from mathematics and physics that describes how small patterns repeat on a larger scale. This theory is something I discovered after distilling the essence of Michel Foucault's theory of power and Nassim Taleb's concept of antifragility. I know this intrigues you, my child. Power is not always linear or rigidly hierarchical. Only those who fail to understand this concept believe that power is fixed. But those who grasp this pattern can navigate power from within, either as rulers or as external manipulators, predicting the cycles that will follow. You may wonder, does understanding this pattern mean that someone who cannot walk will suddenly be able to run? My answer is, it's more like someone who couldn't even crawl suddenly being able to fly. Foucault spoke of power in terms of discipline and surveillance by the state. But today, surveillance is no longer just the domain of governments. It is carried out through algorithms and data. My child, this theory might offer a new paradigm for analyzing power, not as a static entity, but as a living organism that evolves through repeating patterns. Let me go deeper. A dictator controls a nation like a boss controls a company. like a father guarding his family, like your ego controlling your mind. At every level, the mechanisms of control remain the same, through fear, information manipulation, incentives, and ideological conditioning. Perhaps you've experienced this, my child. I remember when you once told me about your early days at university. Back then, you felt like you didn't belong, like your classmates didn't truly know you. At the time, I didn't argue, I just told you to rest. Months later, you told me that you had become close friends with them. Your perception back then was that they didn't recognize who you were, but maybe, just maybe, it was simply due to a lack of communication or a mistake in your adaptation strategy. This, my child, is an example of how your ego manipulates information to protect you from feelings of inadequacy or uncertainty. It creates an internal narrative that shifts personal responsibility onto external factors. The same kind of information manipulation happens in companies. You've probably heard phrases like, "If you work hard, you will succeed here." But in reality, the promotion system might be filled with nepotism. Or, "You should be grateful to have this job. Many people out there have it worse." A phrase designed to discourage employees from demanding better rights. Here, companies use ideological narratives to keep workers within the system, even when that system is not always fair to them. On a national level, governments also shape ideologies to maintain control, my child. How? Through propaganda, education, and media, tools used to shape the way people think, ensuring they do not question the status quo. Nations often sell illusions of collective destiny. For example, this country is destined to lead the world. The narrative makes citizens feel part of a grand mission, even as their welfare is ignored. Humans in power are never satisfied, my child. When standing, they crave a seat. When seated, they want to lie down. When lying down, they dream of utopia. Sleep, unaware their utopia is just another fractal. New revolutions only shift power's shape, never erase it. We can't destroy power, but we can steer how its fractal grows. This fractal theory of power is built on three main pillars, my child. First, power is not monolithic. Monolithic here means centralized in a single system that controls everything. But power doesn't work that way. It spreads like the branches of a tree, each one resembling the whole. The same patterns of control repeat from individuals to families, businesses, and even entire nations. Second, the larger the structure of power, the more hidden its mechanisms become. In small systems such as families, schools, offices, power feels direct. Break a work rule, face instant consequences. But as power scales up to nations and geopolitics, it becomes less visible, embedded within culture, legal systems, and economic structures. This is similar to a fractal. Up close, the pattern is clear, but as you step back, it becomes more complex and harder to see. Let me give you an example. Inflation. It's often used as a tool of power, whether intentionally or not. In school, you were taught that inflation is a general increase in prices, a natural part of economic growth. But in reality, inflation can be seen as a way to silently steal in people's purchasing power. If you like playing role-playing games, think of money as experience points, XP, that help you level up and grow stronger. Now imagine an NPC gives you a pet that offers small buffs in battle, but at the same time, this pet split your XP with them, making it harder to level up. This is how inflation works, my child. It forces people to work harder just to maintain their standard of living, creating economic dependency on the government and financial system while extending the dominance of the ruling class. It's like that game where you're promised greater strength, only to realize that the challenges also keep increasing with every level. Now, who benefits when leveling up becomes harder? Those who already have the strongest items, or those who can buy boosts? The same applies to the economy. Governments benefit because they can repay debt more cheaply as the real value of money declines. Big corporations benefit because they can raise prices faster than workers receive pay raises. The wealthy benefit because they hold assets like land, gold, or stocks, which rise in value over time. Then, who suffers in this situation? The middle and lower classes, workers with fixed wages, retirees living on savings, or those who keep cash. My child, this fractal pattern of inflation has existed since ancient Rome. In the 3rd century AD, the Roman Empire was like a sinking ship. They kept minting coins but gradually reduced the silver content from 100% to just 5%. Not merely out of greed, but because war and the scarcity of precious metals forced them to find quick ways to pay soldiers and fund massive projects. Inflation skyrocketed. Wheat prices soared by 1,000% in just 50 years. Common people who lived on daily wages starved, while the Roman elite shifted their wealth. Gold, land, and slaves became their fortress of security. Like a virus spreading within a body, inflation was not just a miscalculation, it was a fractal pattern. When currency loses its value, those who survive are not the ones who blindly trust the system, but those who understand how to play by its rules. The Roman elite turned land into a tool of control, forcing the poor to become tenant farmers. And when the empire collapsed, feudalism was born. Look closely, my child. The fractal of power beats here. Rulers, whether governments or corporations, always have an exit strategy through real assets, while ordinary people remain trapped in the illusion of paper money. This pattern has repeated itself from Rome to Weimar Germany to Zimbabwe's hyperinflation crisis. Like a tree whose roots remain the same even as its leaves change with the seasons. The final pillar, my child, power thrives on the illusion of choice. Why? Because illusion is not just a tool of power, it is also a shield. My child, humans cannot live by seeing raw reality without meaning. Everyone clings to a story that comforts them, whether through nationalism, religion, ideology, or politics. The irony is, many people feel the most free when they step into a more comfortable illusion. From individuals to nations, power works when subjects feel in control. In business, this illusion becomes more sophisticated. Competition often appears fierce on the surface, but when you look deeper, many opposing sides are actually connected. Just like two restaurants that seem to be rivals but are actually owned by the same corporation. The idea of competition creates the impression of choice. But in reality, it consolidates power into the hands of a few. By creating the illusion of rivalry, they prevent true competitors from emerging, and at some point, they even make societies and nations systemically dependent. Tech giants do this. They control access to digital services, making it nearly impossible for governments to find alternatives. When regulations in Europe tried to limit their dominance in search engines, these corporations responded by strengthening their grip on the digital ecosystem through even more advanced systems and artificial intelligence. If one layer of power is challenged, such as regulators imposing antitrust laws to prevent monopolies, they do not truly lose control. Instead, they shift their influence into policy advocacy networks, digital opinion management, or integration with financial services. Fractal power means when one form shakes, it doesn't vanish. It shifts into another, hidden and harder to control, like Nassim Taleb's anti-fragile concept. To put it simply, my child, when the economic door closes, they enter through the windows of media. When regulations push them back, they hide within algorithms. Business is the art of ruling without seeming to rule. But the illusion of choice isn't just in business, my child. In politics, the same mechanism operates in an even more subtle way. In the past, political influence had a direct grip on economic control, through massive corporate donations or business groups funding candidates via TV ads. But now, power has evolved, adding a new dimension: data control and algorithms, a system far harder for the public to detect. We often think power is driven by actors, governments, corporations, media elites. Yes, they play roles, but not as they once did. Today, algorithms have become an autonomous form of fractal power. On social media, power flows dynamically, without human intervention. Algorithms amplify popular opinions, not neutral truths. Like a snowball rolling downhill, certain narratives grow stronger, not because of direct orders from political or corporate elites, but simply because of the system's natural design. What do power actors do? They adapt. No need to control the system directly. They only need to understand how algorithms work and adjust their strategies accordingly, so that their message flows naturally within the system. Algorithms feed us realities we want to see. It feels like you are choosing the political narrative you believe in, But in reality, they're filtered by code. What is the impact on politics? In modern political campaigns, those who master algorithms sway public opinion quietly. They can flood your social media with a particular narrative until the public perceives it as the majority opinion, when in fact, it is simply an effective digital strategy. Modern democracy is no longer shaped solely by legislative or executive decisions. It is also influenced by digital actors who control the flow of information. Technically, my child, democracy still offers choices. But those choices have often been pre-formatted by the algorithmic system operating behind the scenes. In this way, the freedom to choose in modern democracy becomes a paradox. People feel they have control over their decisions, yet those decisions have already been shaped by an unseen and scattered power structure. So tell me, my child, do you find this fractal theory of power interesting? There are many more patterns that exist, patterns you can actually observe in your daily life. They are all fractals, pieces of a larger structure waiting to be arranged. If you know how to play within it, you can see the whole picture. If power is like a fractal, spreading and adapting from micro to macro, can you escape it? Yes, but it's hard. Perhaps it's wiser to play and position yourself within its patterns, not rejecting all illusions, but choosing ones that give you control. So how do you play the game? Before controlling something, you must know what controls you. In my earlier voice note, I taught you to use empathy to feel others' pain. Now, reframe it. See rulers or competitors as subjects you want to influence. Understand what they truly need. The formula is simple. Empathy plus awareness plus critical thinking plus strategic action equals power. Empathy lets you feel what it's like to be the subject. Awareness helps you gather data and information, just like an algorithm. Understand how information is formed and influenced. If we are talking about algorithms, pay attention. Does a narrative carry strong emotional triggers? Anger, sadness, admiration, or fear are often used to support their opinions. Observe whether a narrative spreads quickly or slowly. This could indicate whether certain forces are pushing the agenda. Awareness is your foundation. Next, develop critical thinking to extract more accurate information. Always ask questions. Never accept an opinion blindly. Ask why, how, who benefits from this perspective. Critical thinking helps you build a stronger, independent perspective rather than simply following the majority narrative. Just as empathy lets you understand a leader's fears, it reveals investor anxieties driving stock crashes. An investor who understands the patterns of power does not just look at stocks going up or down. They analyze how market sentiment is shaped before the masses react. And finally, strategic action. With empathy and critical thinking, you gain a clearer perspective. Strategic action helps you shape new narratives in reality. If a leader holds power through image, then attacking their image can be more effective than physical confrontation. If a major company dominates through branding, then creating a counter-narrative can shake their dominance. Let's see how this formula works in real-world power struggles. Imagine two countries competing in the field of technology. One of them is leading in artificial intelligence. Then, its competitor discovers a new concept, one that offers both efficiency and technological advancement. Suddenly, the leading nation's stock market crashes. What does this reveal about fractal power, my child? On the macro level, in geopolitics and the global economy, the leading country initially held a monopoly on artificial intelligence, not just in tech, but in market dominance, industry standards, and investor trust. Then, a new technology emerged and the balance of power shifted, not because the first country was immediately defeated, but because the perception of its dominance started to crumble. The stock market turned red because the future of power had changed in the eyes of investors. On the meso level, within corporations and the tech industry, the dominant companies began losing their bargaining power. Investors feared they could no longer maintain control, leading to a drop in stock prices. The illusion of choice shifts. Once, investors saw only one safe option. Now, the rival becomes a viable alternative. This is similar to how political power works. When a new leader appears promising, support for the old one starts to weaken, even if the old leader hasn't actually failed yet. On the micro level, top executives in dominant firms fear that even a minor shift in perception could cost them everything. And when the media amplifies this fear, a snowball effect begins, driving the market down faster than anyone anticipates. This proves that economic power, just like political power, survives not just because of real strength, but because people believe that strength will last. At the same time, this is an example of how strategic action is used to manipulate market psychology. The collapse of power doesn't happen due to absolute weakness, but because of a shift in perception about who will hold power in the future. Those who grasp this can steer power transitions. For example, the country that feels threatened could shape a narrative that the new technology is unproven, or push regulations that slow down its competitor. Understanding the fractal means having the freedom to choose, my child. If a workplace promotions are often driven by nepotism or networking, if that's the game, shouldn't you master the art of communication with those in power? Most people only react to the world unaware of the fractal patterns of power. But once you see it, you have a choice to resist, to utilize, or to transcend it completely. Above all, my child, never let the world define who you are. Be the wind, not the leaf carried away. Be the river that carves its own path, not the stone that remains still. That way, no matter how tangled the web of power around you, you will always find freedom in your own way. In my next voice note, I might talk about ambition, how it can give you everything, or how it can destroy you. May you always be blessed with good health. Until next time, my child.